Greetings, Earthlings. Welcome to Nature Obscura, a podcast where nature and the supernatural collide. I'm Marissa.
And I'm Grace. Each week, we share spooky happenings from the great outdoors, from cryptids to curses, ghosts to witches, and everything in between.
Before we jump into our main story this week, Grace, do you have any eerie or earthy encounters?
I went back to my family in Southern Illinois for the holiday, and the first morning after I wake up, I open up the curtains. It's like blackout curtains. I open up the curtains, and there are snow geese flying overhead. And by my calculations, I think there must have been at least 500 flying right overhead. It was amazing. And honestly, it's not that uncommon where I live. Like, I've seen it many times, but I haven't had a lot of time to go bird watching or seen many birds lately. So it was really beautiful to see all of the birds flying. That was really special.
That's really cute, and I think it's perfectly suitable for this time of year, like Christmas time, the snow geese flying overhead. I don't think I've ever seen a flock of snow geese. Those are like the all-white ones, right?
They can be white, but they can also be brown, like kind of a mottled color, or they can just be completely brown. So it's really cool. It's kind of a cool thing about them. So whenever you're looking at a flock, it's not all white. There are some spots in there.
That's cool, so they have some variation. I went down to Hocking Hills right after Christmas,
That's
and
right.
it was super fun. We hiked and trailed some areas I had never been to before, and we went to Point Pleasant, which has the Mothman Museum, and it was so awesome.
Yeah, you saw
It
the
was
statue.
everything. I saw the statue. I went to the gift shop. The gift shop was really cool. They had everything you could ever want. I got a t-shirt and a sweatshirt. But I was just really amazed. I didn't really know much about the Mothman legend, and we'll definitely have
Mm-hmm.
to do a deep dive on it on a different episode. But did you know that during the time that the original sightings were occurring, that some biologists from different universities were like, you're actually talking about a sandhill crane. What you're describing is just a
Oh my
sandhill
God.
crane. And the poor women who actually witnessed it were just saying, I wish these doctors could see what we saw. It was not a bird. It was chasing our car. I'm like, what sandhill crane chases a car? It was just,
Right. What bird ever really chases a car?
I know. And it's just the descriptions that I read the descriptions that the biologists from that time also read because it was the firsthand accounts. And I don't understand how they got sandhill crane.
It's pretty far out there. It's a government conspiracy.
Right. That was the main things I was taking photo of. Was there was several vintage news articles that were all showing sandhill crane. It's just a sandhill crane, guys. We're fine. Mothman or bird? And it was ridiculous, but it was a lot of fun. They even had an escape room. A Mothman themed escape room. They had everything. I'm definitely gonna go back.
Whenever I first went there, I just did a little bit of research when we were crossing the bridge, but that's pretty much it.
I really liked how much firsthand accounts there were and how heavily documented it was, which is really fascinating for cryptids. You get stories decades after the fact with no publication, no written history. But here they had it all written out. Like they had the very first witnesses, police statements handwritten. It was really cool.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I would love to hear more about that. This is very easily turning into a Mothman episode.
True, true. I could go on forever. We will definitely cover him in depth a different time. But this happening today is a little different and not too many cryptids in sight, but maybe a few will appear later on.
All right, sounds good. Well, I am excited to find out. So let's get underway. Today's otherworldly happenings occur in Nahanni National Park, located in the Northwest Territories of Canada. Established in 1972 as a national park, the park covers over 413,000 acres with diverse habitats from ice fields, mountains, alpine tundra, and boreal forest. The river gorge runs through the park and is a whopping 200 miles in length, the valley of the gorge covering 19,000 square miles. The remoteness of the park makes access difficult, usually only accessed by boat or plane. The park has a limited range of recommended travel from June to mid August. Prior to June, there's a risk of spring floods, and after late August, you risk encountering severe weather. The terrain is rugged and ominous, with steep mountains and dense forests, dangerous caves and crevices, as well as remote cliffs. It's been noted that of the over 250 caves in the valley, many have actually remained unexplored. That's pretty crazy. I could never spelunk. That could never be me. I like going into caves, but I don't want to get stuck.
I would never spelunk. The closest I would come to it is a fracture cave tour I did in Ohio. It was the Seneca Caverns, I believe. It's a fracture cave. So instead of you just walking down a flight of stairs or similar and walking a kind of straight tunnel path, you are zigzagging your way down this fracture of a cave. And it was pretty narrow, and you had to slide through at some parts, and you had to
Oh my gosh.
walk very low to the ground, having to bend all the way over. But
Hmm.
I never got to the point where I was feeling too claustrophobic, but anything more than that, no. I was at
Yeah,
maximum capacity with that fracture cave. I would never slither into something.
those are my thoughts exactly. But and I've never experienced anything like that. I've just done Mammoth Caves and um what are the caves in Missouri? I forget. But I'll remember later.
If I told you about this, about that Seneca Caverns cave, it's also partially under a cemetery. Did I tell you that?
My God. What do you mean partially? It's just
I mean that I went to the cave, I went to the caverns, and then right next door as I'm pulling up, there's a cemetery, and I look at Cody are we going to be underneath a cemetery? And we're walking through, the tour guide is giving us a tour of the cave, and he points to a section that's roped off. He's like, "Yeah, don't worry, the cemetery's over there. We're not gonna go underneath it." And I was like, kind of, darn. And the guy, of course, I had my ghost tube out. And the guy next to me was like, "I'm getting bad feelings." He was kind of freaking out. So, I thought it was, a good, freak out. He thought it was cool at first. I realized he wasn't cool with it, so I turned off the ghost tube. I mean, not that he could hear it, but I was excited. He was opposite. He was dressed like a punk, like a goth. I thought he'd vibe.
I've never experienced somebody being afraid of a ghost like that. No shame to that guy.
Right, right, I get it. I misread the vibe because
Mhm.
him and his girlfriend, I think, mentioned it, and I was excited because after the tour guide mentioned that, we went down another, steep incline, and as soon as we got into this space, he's like, "Whoa, I'm feeling this, heavy, weird energy," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, really? I got my ghost tube app on," and he was
He
it
was
was
not
not
happy.
it. I misread the vibe. He had, leather spikes coming out of his jacket. I thought he would be into it. He wasn't.
Gosh.
I love caves. So, I'm excited that we're here.
Especially under cemeteries, so it's even better, so.
Yeah.
The area also has unusual geological formations, including delicate tufa terraces built up over time by mineral rich spring water. Because they can easily crumble, visitors are only allowed on them barefoot and with a guide. The valley's hot spring releases sulfurous steam that turns into rolling fog when it hits the cold northern air, creating an eerie, shifting haze. The park is known to have abundant plant diversity, including the Nahanni aster, found nowhere else in the world. This variety comes from the park's wild range of habitats. Lowland wetlands fill the valleys, boreal forests rise along the slopes, and the highest elevations open into alpine tundra. Mosses and lichen are also prominent in the area, compared to other habitats in the northern regions. Areas mostly in the west remain unvegetated due to being under constant ice and snow, basically a seemingly perpetual winter. Not only does diverse vegetation embrace this land, hundreds of wildlife species call this remote haven home, including 42 species of mammals that roam the valleys, 180 species of birds that fly through the skies, and 16 species of fish that swim through the streams. Due to the cool northern climates, very few amphibians are known to thrive in the park, and no reptiles are known to inhabit the area. Rabbit Kettle Lake is a particularly great hotspot for wildlife, known for being fantastic bird habitat, as well as an area where both black bears and grizzly bears are fond of. The Nahanni Valley is an isolated region, stunningly beautiful and teeming with wildlife. Yet, many visitors arrive and feel a sense of eeriness or even a lingering dread. Locals say that some visitors never leave. For most, it's known as the Valley of the Headless Men. Now, let's get ready to explore the wild history of this beautiful landscape and its disturbing phenomena.
So many people have lost their lives in the valley. And as a common macabre nickname for the valley indicates, they also lost their heads. In 1904, two brothers, Frank and Willie McLeod from the Northwest Territories region, visited the area seeking gold and fortune, also hoping to find a more direct route into the Yukon. They traveled hundreds of kilometers through difficult terrain to reach what they could refer to as Gold Creek. Reportedly making a crude boat from sluice boxes, they were to float partway down the river and pan enough gold to fill a small bottle.
What is a sluice box? It's like a sifter, right?
It's just, yeah, it's a long, flat sifter to sift gold and other objects. For them, obviously, mainly gold. And they were smart enough to somehow make a rudimentary boat out of it.
Hmm. Wow.
While they didn't strike big this first time going, that first expedition had them hopeful that a richer source lay nearby. Struck with gold fever, the brothers returned the following year in 1905 with money on their minds and their friend, a Scottish engineer named Robert Weir, in tow. On this second journey, the three men unfortunately disappeared and were never heard from again. Distraught and with a hearty dedication to find his brothers, Charlie McLeod arrived in the valley 3 years later in 1908. There, the last McLeod brothers stumbled upon their camp, finding just two incomplete skeletons with their heads severed. The skeletons were identified as Frank and Willie McLeod by the remains themselves, not by the remains themselves, but by their recognizable belongings: a stamped belt buckle, a cooking tin, and a well-used rucksack found in the tent. The scene appeared untouched since their deaths, with one skeleton arm reaching towards a nearby gun, and the blankets draped over the other, as if they had abruptly jumped out of bed, possibly alerted by an intruder, inhuman or otherwise.
Ooh.
Despite their untimely end, many believed they may have found treasure after all. Several accounts state that during Charlie McLeod's trip to find his missing brothers, they discovered a possible clue of both treasure found and possibly a cause for the brothers' demise. A wooden sled runner a short distance away from the campsite, engraved with the words, "We have found a fine prospect."
This is like a mystery, a murder
It
mystery here.
is. But also, why would you announce it for everyone to know?
Right. That's suspicious.
Definitely not victim blaming. This is all kind of lore, but if
Exactly.
I found
No.
a treasure, I'm not gonna announce it on the equivalent of, I would imagine a large wooden sled is the equivalent of a billboard in a
Mhm.
in a in a early 1900s park, but I don't know. So the story of the Lost McCloud mine has been featured in many books and magazines, with 20 people reportedly dying in search of it. Rumors
Wow.
spread of gold nuggets being found as large as goose eggs, which, if you guys aren't familiar with goose eggs, they're quite large. And I don't know how much money that would be, like the equivalent of gold wise, but you'd be rich because of these supposed rumors of these incredibly large gold nuggets being found. Many prospectors were coming and flocking to the area to discover this gold mine. For many, the prospects of finding such vast fortunes outweighed any warnings they heard about the dangers of the area. Just under 10 years later, in 1917, Martin Jorgensen, a prospector who had corresponded with friends that he had recently struck gold, was found decapitated near his cabin that he had built along the Flat River. The cabin also had signs of being deliberately burnt down, with investigators being unable to determine Jorgensen's cause of death.
Sounds like someone's targeting the people who strike it good.
Right. It's never been said for certain. The authorities and the locals think very different things, with some thinking possibly human caused murder, greed, tale as old as time, or something otherworldly and unnatural altogether. And though, despite claims that Jorgensen had recently struck gold, there was no evidence of any gold found in the cabin's burnt remains. So, could someone have stolen the gold? Could he have just been fibbing and bragging? Who knows? These gruesome events fueled rumors of headhunters. In 1927, the rumors grew again. An outlaw and part-time prospector who went by the name Yukon Fisher was found decapitated near where the McLeod brothers' remains were found nearly 20 years earlier. He had recently fled the Yukon after getting in a fight with a bartender and was on the run heading to the valley in search of gold. Similarly to Jorgensen, Fisher's nearby shelter was burnt to the ground. Even more shockingly, a bent rifle was found lying next to Fisher's decapitated body.
Okay, that has me thinking that my theory is that someone's murdering them. They also have a bear with them. That's my theory.
We have someone that likes to decapitate heads and is an arsonist with a companion bear. Can bears bend rifles?
I don't know. I guess it depends on the rifle. These are like probably like old ones, right?
That's true. It is 1927, and
Okay, yeah.
this guy probably doesn't have a lot of money, so I'm going to say it's an older rifle. How sturdy are these older rifles? On the other hand, they always say that things like aren't made the way they used to be. Their refrigerator that lasts 60 years from the 1940s, maybe it's actually a sturdier rifle than the ones today. Like,
Yeah,
maybe we
you're
should be
right.
more impressed.
I am impressed. All right. Keep
I'm
going.
impressed
I'm
either way.
curious. I'm curious, like, what people think that it is.
The mysterious death started to ramp up, with a prospector and trapper by Phil Powers being reported missing after failing to return from a trip to the Flat River Valley in 1921. The RCMP investigated and found Powers, along with his cabin, burnt to ashes. Though the police blamed a faulty stovepipe resulting in a fatal accident, the local prospectors and other citizens of the area thought otherwise. Later reportings told of empty gas cans at the site, and claims of the intensity of the fire that resulted in such destruction further expanded those beliefs that this wasn't just an accident after all, but something far more sinister. The grim reputation of the area is so well known that one adventurer, Neil Hartland, received a stern warning before making his way to the valley. Quote, "Men vanish in that country, and down the river, they say it's a damned good country to keep clear of," end quote. Hartland did not, wrote a book on it, had a long, happy life. Good for him. He avoided.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what could have happened? Yeah.
Maybe he was
Well,
the one that did it. I'm not. No, he didn't.
well
But
yeah.
we don't know. Outside these specifically reported decapitations, there are unverified accounts of countless others who have vanished. Among the 44 people who have officially been reported missing or have died in the area is a hunter named Annie Laferte. In 1926, she vanished while on a hunting trip with a small party near the Flat River. Official records only note that she was never seen again, but years later, storytellers and local trackers share they had seen her a few months after her first being reported missing. They recounted, however, unsettling accounts. A naked, disoriented Annie climbing a steep hillside, her footprints ending and reappearing in impossible places. No trace of her was ever found, and her disappearance remains one of the valley's most haunting mysteries.
Yeah, that's terrifying. If you actually saw that.
Right. Hey, isn't that the woman that was on that hiking trip a couple months ago? My gosh. Why is she naked and climbing up that rock face with no propelling gear with just her hands as claws? Terrifying.
Like, why would they make that up, you know?
Right. This next one is a much more recent, unexplained deaths that have happened in the valley. And disclaimer, definitely don't think anything supernatural about this, but it just further shows the mysterious and weird trend of this area having these mysterious deaths. So in 2005, two experienced hunters had rented a cabin in the valley for a hunting trip. David Horsey and Frederick Hardesty were missing for 2 weeks before they were found deceased miles away from their cabin. Frederick had been found floating in the North Nahanni River, over 12 miles from the cabin, with an autopsy revealing he had died of drowning. David had been found in an area with extremely dense bush just over 2 miles from the cabin. A search team member reported that he had burns on his hands and arms, with his autopsy revealing that he had died of hypothermia. It is important to note that the area where these men had been found were previously searched several times. Friends and family were baffled by their deaths, their families stating that the two men had completely acted out of character. These well adventured outdoorsmen wouldn't have left the safety of their cabin without their supplies, food, or firearms. In addition, searchers for the men reported that when they were looking for clues in the cabin, there were evident bullets all around the cabin. Despite these oddities, the RCMP controversially closed the case, and the families responded by filing a complaint on the way the case was handled, as well as called for a public inquiry into their deaths. These events are not proof of the supernatural, but they do show the valley's history has left a long-lasting sense of mystery and danger.
So are all of these documented in the newspaper and all of that kind of stuff, or is it just hearsay?
All of these are documented. The Annie Laferte one, I will say, and the Yukon Fisher, I was not able to find official reports of. It's more so local talk and local stories, but the
Mhm.
two deaths of these two men in 2005 are very well documented, with articles as recently as 2015 of the family still asking the RCMP to reevaluate.
That's really tragic. Those 2 men, I mean, just randomly died when they seemed to be so prepared. Something had to have happened, like, that led them there. Something strange.
Right, they had left all their belongings inside, they had left their rifles in, they didn't have any of their gear, and for them to die in ways that those who are unprepared would maybe more so naturally pass from, their family was just shocked because this was completely out of character.
Yeah, because like, why would somebody who's really into, like, wilderness stuff and, like, camping, hiking I mean, I know everyone can freeze to death, but I feel like they would know how to stay warm or, like, how to get into shelter at least.
Right, and the fact that David was found 2 miles away from the cabin in dense bush, it's just, what were they doing out there? Especially without their rifles, they weren't hunting. That's not necessarily an area you would go just walk a trail to, especially
Mhm.
without your proper attire if it's cold enough that you're suffering from hypothermia. So hopefully, the RCMP with enough pushback and press, they will hopefully revisit the case and get the family the answers they deserve.
Yeah. At this point, I'm starting to think government cover-up. I think I'm gonna go through all of them at this point.
It's gonna be your go-to for a lot of these, I think.
That's so funny. At least one of them has to be true. Like, out of the whole podcast, we have to get at least one that's true. Government cover-up.
You are very correct. If you say it's a government cover-up for every single one, at least one of them has to be. And you know what? I actually think I know which one might actually be a government cover-up, but we'll cover that one in a couple weeks.
Don't spoil it for me.
Okay, I won't. All right, so let's jump back in. While many of the deaths or vanishings have been attributed to worldly causes such as starvation, murder, animal interactions, or succumbing to the elements, there's little to no full explanation that can explain away the unusually high numbers of repeated beheadings and vanishings. Because what wild animal, a lot of the time, these multiple beheadings do get ruled away from being a wild animal, whether that's a bear or something else. But what bear is just ripping off the head? We're not seeing other things.
That's not indicative of pretty much any animal that you're gonna find there.
It's deliberate. It's very
Yeah.
strange.
I feel like nowadays they can find what this was cut with. It was a jagged line. It was a really clean line. I wonder what their findings for that were.
Right. Back then, they didn't do too much investigating, so I'm sure we'll probably never know, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So, what did cause these beheadings and mysterious vanishings? Could it be a curse? An ancient tribal practice preserved in the oral traditions of the Dene? Or might it be one of the cryptids said to roam the valley alongside the caribou and snowshoe hares? Could the frequent UFO sightings in the area have anything to do with it? Perhaps some of these explanations are entirely natural, but maybe, just maybe, there is something beyond our understanding at work in the Nahanni Valley. According to the Dene, who have lived in the area for over 11,000 years, there was once an ancient tribe, the Naha. The Naha was described as fierce and a warlike tribe who dominated the mountains and were said to raid the lowland Dene settlement. In some supernatural retellings, the Naha were not just a tribe, but took on ghostly or even demonic qualities that were not just enemies of the Dene, but mysterious and highly aggressive creatures that were larger than ordinary humans, wearing alarming armor and masked and carrying strange otherworldly weapons. In other cases, the Naha are said to be able to shapeshift. Local lore ties the Naha to taboos and spiritual danger, with it thought that certain hidden or even cursed areas of the Nahanni Valley are protected by their spirits. If those enter the protected areas without respect or ceremony, misfortunes can occur. In some retellings of the Naha history, it is said that the Dene launched a surprise attack at night, and the Naha were nowhere to be found. All was left were the Naha tribe's teepees. They were gone without a trace, their fires still burning in the moonlight. Their sudden disappearance added to the mystery and furthered the ongoing lore of the Naha. So basically, they're sick of being raided repeatedly. They're finally saying, okay, we're going to get back at this Naha tribe. We're going to attack them in the middle of the night. They probably worked so hard, all coordinated, got up in the middle of the night, the planning, they go, just gone. Gone and never seen again. Fire's still burning, teepee's still standing.
Like they were gone suddenly.
Yeah.
Wow. I find it so interesting that there are these kind of stories even way back then, leading thousands of years, and it's still kind of happening in the area. Just makes it much scarier. Where it's like it's not just a murderer.
Right. It's not something new. It's something that has been around for thousands and thousands of years.
Mhm.
Alternate legends associated with the Naha are the Nahanni, a wild, Bigfoot-esque creature with glowing red eyes and long hair covering the entire body. They are actually one of the many cryptids said to inhabit the valley. The Nahanni are said to lurk among the remote caves and canyons, perhaps surprising and beheading unassuming prospectors as they search for gold. Earliest reportings of the Nahanni are from the late 19th century from a preacher, Father Emile Petito, and trader B.R. Ross, who recounted odd footprints and abnormal sounds coming from the forest that greatly worried the Indigenous camps they stayed in during their travels. Reported by Canadian writer and explorer, the Nahannis were repulsive, with gargoylish faces who lived in caves and were reported to be twice the size of humans. Their freakishly large footprints as evidence of their abnormally huge stature. The creatures are said to never miss the opportunity to carry off unsuspecting hunters or vulnerable people that have strayed from their groups.
Okay. Wow, that is scary too.
The Naha legends are part of a living cultural memory. Depending on who you talk to, their legacy ends with being an ancient adversary of the Danaes to guardians of hidden or cursed places, with the Naha often being woven into warnings about the valley's supernatural powers. For the Dene people, the area has not only been the home of their own and the wildlife that live there, but is home to hidden gardens and spirits. In the 1940s, newspaper readers across Canada and the United States were captivated by tales of a tropical oasis hidden somewhere in the Nahanni region, an impossible refuge where snow never fell and ice never formed. The Dene tell of an ancient giant living at the Rabbit Kettle Hot Springs, and the giant used the hot spring to cook food. The hot springs are considered sacred as a result, and offerings like tobacco are left there to bring about good luck. When the springs are full, it is a good omen. Now that we have discussed some of the Dene's rich oral traditions, let's move on to some more generalized Nahanni folklore. The Waheela is a cryptid tied to the valley and is described as a huge wolf-like beast with very light to white colored fur. The Waheela is described to have a broad head, very large feet, and front limbs that are longer than their hind limbs. They are solitary creatures that some say have supernatural or malevolent behaviors that tie them as potential perpetrators of the headless victims in the area. Some possible explanations locals have on this cryptid is that it could actually be an ancient species that was previously thought extinct, a sort of bear dog surviving and unchanging in its isolation. Others say that the Waheela could have a genetic abnormality causing its otherworldly large size. Have you ever heard of anything like this?
No, I love dinosaurs and extinct animals, so I love imagining that this could be something else.
I think that, yeah, some scientists think that they could actually just be like evolutionarily old ancient wolf dogs that we thought are extinct and actually aren't. Are dire wolves real? I'm thinking like the dire wolves from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, apparently dire wolves were real.
That's good to know because I get confused sometimes. Like I forgot the narwhal is actually real. That's one I forget.
That's awesome. I would love to experience that all the time. Oh, that's a real animal? That's awesome.
Wait, a giraffe? Oh my gosh.
Just like
But it's
full
it's
of wonder.
it's amazing though because if someone were to describe to you a platypus, a giraffe. If you didn't know these creatures, you would say, how on earth could that be? That definitely doesn't sound real, but they exist. So maybe the Waheela is real. And I mean, it makes sense. It is such an isolated region.
The way I think of it too, though, like over time, people embellish on stories. So, you know how it's like the fish was this big, but it was actually like this big, right? It had the biggest teeth. It was all white and just kind of people over exaggerating over the years.
So it definitely could just be a overly dramatized light and color wolf or coyote. You know,
Yeah,
it's hard to
exactly.
say.
One that was deformed a little bit.
My favorite cryptid is next,
Oh,
if you can call it that. Well, yes. Another cryptid of Nahanni folklore is the Nuk-luk, or the man of the bush. The Nuk-luk, or the man of the bush, described as a short, hairy Neanderthal-like being that has a flavor for cannibalism. During a 1965 expedition, adventurer Frank Graves settled in with residents of the Nahanni Butte, who spoke of strong, bearded, and small beings wearing simple skin clothing, like cattle skin, not human skin. The year prior, several sightings had occurred across the area, including involving one woman who saw a strange humanoid, hairy face peering into her cabin at dusk. As soon as she noticed the being and made eye contact, it quickly shrunk away and ran off. Another sighting involves trappers encountering a naked, muscular, small, hairy man that, upon trying to get the man's attention, the man-like creature emitted a low, eerie growl and ran off. The final story was that of a father and son duo who lived in a nearby village. The young boy's dog started to bark and growl at something in the woods. His father shone his flashlight into the trees, suspecting a bear approaching. So this is more recent. And instead of a bear, a Nuk-luk was there, gazing, as if memorized by the light emitting from the flashlight, with just a moose skin loincloth on and a clubstone in his hand. The dog started barking again, breaking the Nuk-luk's trance as he darted across the family's yard and into the bush.
that would be very startling if you saw that he was just wearing a moose skin loincloth and held a club. Yeah.
I love the idea of him getting mesmerized by a flashlight. I wonder if you could try and entrance them and bring out more Nuk-luks by having sparklers, having a fireworks show, and they just emerge from the forest and they all come out and you can
But the real
see and learn
question is,
more.
do you want that?
Seem more scared of the people than they are of the Nuk-luk. They seem confused by
Yeah,
other
yeah.
people.
I'm just worried about the club that they're holding.
True. That is true. They did say, I'm sorry, I did completely say that they are said to be cannibalistic. Forgot. Forgot.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of forgot about that fact.
Yeah, well, none of the encounters seemed particularly frightening, but yeah, they did throw in the word cannibalism, and that's pretty serious.
Yeah,
So
but does cannibalism at that point, do they only eat other Nuk-luks? You know, maybe not humans.
that's true. If they're eating their own kind, it wouldn't be cannibalism. The last and shortest of the theories of the strange headless men involve UFOs or potential extraterrestrials coming down and wreaking havoc in this isolated region. The valley has long been associated with strange, erratic lights in the night sky, as well as UFO reports. Though, unlike other cryptids, they're much harder to find first witness accounts of. A metaphysical episode of Never Whistle in the Woods correlated the extensive zinc mine operations in the area to potentially something else going on underground, aka alien research, aka, as you mentioned, government cover up.
Government cover up. Yep.
Of course, with a place as remote and vast as this one, with a sordid history, there are signs of paranormal hauntings and happenings, including an investigator recording in the valley what appeared to be the Dene word for beware, anomalies shaped like half circles above dig sites, and a camera that was lowered into the hole of a glacier Mullen, recording strange moaning sounds before the camera rope was completely snapped clean off, as if it were cut. If you ever decide to go to Nahanni Valley to either solve the mystery of the Headless Men, encounter one of the many cryptids, or hope to get haunted by one of the supposed ghosts or aliens that lurk there, be sure to watch out for the signs around the area of where you must keep out. The park keeps areas of the park closed, reciting protections from grizzlies or other environmental reasons. However, locals suggest they may be closing areas for another, more otherworldly reason, to contain the park's supernatural forces. Whether it's a cryptid that is in a closed off portion of the park or a herd of caribou, make sure to follow the signage and keep your head on your shoulders.
Wow, I feel like towards the end there, I was leaning more towards alien. I've literally gone from murderer to wild animal to government conspiracy, cryptid, and then alien.
Right. There's so many different things going on, and it could be any number or all of them. I truly have no idea what's going on. I do know that I'm not sure if I'd want to go to this park. I don't know if I like the idea of how isolated it is. I do have a fear of my proximity to a hospital. Like, I want to know there is a hospital within a short distance, like at least an hour if something were to go haywire.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes complete sense. I feel like the people working there, they have to have like either know what's out there or they're just making sure everyone stays safe on the trails. I don't know. Like, have you looked up or like, do we know if there are many bear attacks in the area? Because I feel like they put those signs up after a bear attack or something to warn the community. But also, if there's never been an actual bear attack, then that would be strange.
That's actually a valid point. I actually haven't heard or saw much as far as bear attacks, but I do know that they have very large herds of caribou. They have such an extensive group that it has a specific name. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but they have a specific group that is so large that local universities study it. And when I say local, I mean they're probably hundreds of miles away because of how isolated this region is, but they do research on it and study these caribou. I think, tracking their genetics and that sort of thing, probably their behaviors as well. So there's definitely a large amount of caribou. They're not coming up with that out of nowhere. I would like to think that the park employees are not only protecting the herds of caribou and the grizzlies and the visitors that travel there, but maybe they're also protecting the Nuk-luks and the Waheela and the Nahanni. Who knows?
The government conspiracy is that they are keeping them there secret as like a conservation effort from the government.
That'd be wild.
Be wild. Uh, I think there are so many other beautiful places out there to go rather than this place. And I mean, you risk dying, maybe a horrible death at this place. So I think I will pass going here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really into the whole gold rush situation, and I don't care to lose my head over it. Though there are though the area is pretty breathtaking, Canada has a lot of breathtaking parts that don't involve me losing my head, getting abducted by a UFO, getting attacked by one of the many cryptids in the area. So I think I'll take my chances probably at a different park.
All right, so the scare scale. This is kind of where we land as far as how scary we think this cryptid or alien or government conspiracy or ghost or, whatever we think it is. How scary is it? So, one being not very scary, like you kind of just look at it, look away. And the high end, number 10, that's like, you're just like, I'm out of there. Like, this is going to haunt me for the rest of my life.
Exactly. I feel like I'm so all over the place with my rankings. I need to come up with like my own personal scale system of how I'm ranking these because, like many things I do in life, I am totally overthinking it.
Well, that makes a good point because what would you say a 5 is? Like what kind of reaction would a 5 be?
And there's just so many different aspects to this place. This area has so much going on in it. Some things like maybe scarier than others, so how do you judge? So, okay, let's see. Say we have a trip planned there. We have to start by going on like a small, tiny charter plane. Scared. I'm already scared. Okay, we get there. Oh, wait, you're telling me I just landed in the Valley of Headless Men? Okay, fantastic.
It's like, but did you die? You know? It's like, I wish I would have known that before I booked the trip.
I mean, right. There's Nuk-luks. You're telling me that there's tiny, nearly naked, hairy men just roaming around and they might like to eat each other or us? Okay. And then on top of the aliens and cryptids, I just can't. It's a little much. It's a little much. I'll say like a 7. I'm saying I'm okay with maybe not going to this place.
Yeah, after listing out all of the things that can be very scary slash kill you. You know, the flight, just everything there, the isolation. I think 7 or 8. Yeah, you'd be scared the entire time. Like whether or not you get murdered, you see a murderer, you see a cryptid, you see an extinct animal or a government facility, you know, you'd be scared the whole time. Yeah. So that's my rating.
Thanks everyone for joining us this week. If you're enjoying our show, we'd love for you to give us a follow and tell a friend about us and say, maybe you should listen to our show. If you like the outdoors, you like weird, spooky things, welcome to the club. If you have any spooky happenings, either if you've randomly been to this very remote Nahanni Valley, or you have any other weird tales that involve the outdoors, feel free to email us at natureobscurapod@gmail.com. And you can also fill out the contact form on our website, natureobscurapod.com.
Stay obscure, Earthlings.
Transmission ending.